Hello everyone, welcome to another lesson of our Flutter course. Today, we're going to cover a very important topic, dialogs. Dialogs are pop-up windows that allow interaction with the user, whether it's for getting confirmation, displaying messages, requesting some information, and so on. By the end of this video, you will learn what types of dialogs exist in Flutter and how to use them correctly. So, let's get started. Let's begin with the basics. What is a dialog? A dialog in a mobile app is an interface element that appears over the main content. For example, when you see a message saying, "Are you sure you want to delete this file?" with two buttons, yes and no, that's a dialog. Let's say we have a button in the center of the screen, and we want a dialog to appear when it is pressed. To display a dialog in Flutter, there is a method called showDialog. This method takes two parameters. The first is a build context parameter. The second accepts a function that must return a widget. This function has one parameter, which is also build context. At first glance, this structure might seem confusing, but you'll understand everything shortly. Let's return some widget inside this function, for example, an empty container. After running the code and pressing the button, we see an error. The issue is that we need to pass a context to this method that can see material app, as it is necessary for dialogs to work. But in this case, we're using the context from the build method, where we write our material app, so our context doesn't know about material app. The thing is, this context is created before our build method is called, so it doesn't know about the widgets inside it. We've encountered this type of error before, and we know that to fix it, we can simply move our button into a separate widget. Let's do that. Now, the context we pass to the function is created within material app. Let's rerun the code and press the button again. As we can see, the screen dims. This is normal because when a dialog is displayed, the screen should dim to focus more attention on the dialog. But the problem is, we are returning a plain container, so we don't see the dialog itself. However, Flutter has predefined widgets that simplify the process of creating dialogs. For example, let's start with the most popular one, AlertDialog. This pop-up window usually has a title, content, and several buttons. This class has many parameters such as title, content, actions, and so on. Let's start with the title parameter. This is a widget type parameter, and usually you pass a text widget to it. Let's do that and pass a text widget. Next, we'll move on to the content parameter. This is also a widget type parameter, so we can pass some text in addition to the title. Let's run the code. After pressing the button, a dialog appears. Notice that even though we didn't pass any additional styles for our texts, they look different. The text we passed for the title is larger than the one for the content. That's because Flutter does this automatically if no explicit styles are provided. This is how it should be, as the title is usually larger than the content. We can close the dialog by tapping anywhere outside of it. Now, let's add some buttons to our dialog. To do this, we need to pass the actions parameter, which is a list of widgets. Let's start by passing one button to this list, which we'll create using the text button widget. This widget allows us to easily create a button that simply consists of text. This class has two parameters, onPressed, which accepts a function that is triggered when the button is pressed, and the text parameter, where we pass our text widget to display as the button label. After rerunning the code, we see that a button has appeared in our dialog. However, pressing it does nothing because we haven't written any functionality for the onPressed method. Let's make it so that pressing the button closes the dialog. To do this, we need to use the pop method from Navigator. We already covered this method in the lesson on navigation, and as we remember, we used it to go back to the previous page. But it can also be used to close dialogs. To use it, we first need to get an instance of our navigator using the static of method, passing in the context. Then we call the pop method. After rerunning the code and pressing the button in the dialog, we see that it closes. Another interesting parameter is icon. We can pass an icon widget to it. Let's rerun the code and see what we get. We now see an icon, but the title has moved to the center. This is a quirk of AlertDialog. Another dialog available in Flutter is SimpleDialog. This is another type of dialog, typically used for choosing between several options. It also has a title parameter but no content or actions parameters. Instead, it has the children parameter, which accepts a list of widgets. Usually, SimpleDialog option widgets are passed to it. This widget has its own parameters, such as child, on pressed, and so on. Let's start with child, which is a widget type parameter where text is usually passed. The next parameter is on pressed, and as we can infer from experience, such parameters accept a function. Let's display a message in the console when the user clicks on an element and close the dialog just like we did before. After rerunning the code and clicking on an element, we see that everything works. But right now, we only have one element, which doesn't make much sense. So let's use a for loop to create 5 elements with different text. Now we have a dialog with 5 elements, each of which closes the dialog when clicked. However, the dialog also closes when we click on any free space. This isn't always helpful, for example, when we need to get a response from the user. To prevent this, the showDialog method has a special bool parameter called barrier dismissible. By default, it is true, so we can close the dialog by clicking on free space. Let's pass false to it and see what happens. Now, we can't close the dialog by clicking outside of it. Today, we've covered several types of dialogs in Flutter, such as AlertDialog and SimpleDialog. In future lessons, we'll dive deeper into this topic and explore how to create and customize other types of dialogs. If you have any questions or something is unclear, write in the comments and I'll definitely help you figure it out. Subscribe, like, and hit the bell icon to not miss new lessons. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.